Welcome back everyone. Today we'll create our first Python program which will use Vector's SDK. We'll basically make Vector do like a small simple dance by controlling the motors of the wheels, the arm and the head. Of course, I'm assuming that by now you have already successfully installed the SDK and that you have also successfully installed PyCharm and Python. If you have not done so already, you can go back and watch my previous videos and then come back to this one. Okay, so first things first, let's go ahead and create a new project for our program. To do so, just open the PyCharm, then click on create a new project. And let's specify where you want to create it. You can create it anywhere you like. For me, it will be in the vector, and I will create a new folder for this project called Simple Dance. Okay, once you do so, click on the small arrow here. Now you might have this option selected by default, the new environment, but we don't really need that since we're just doing a small project, just a single class. So just go ahead and choose existing interpreter. We don't want to go into the hassle of setting up the SDK for the new environment. So let's just use this. Create, and here's your project, should be empty. The first thing you have to do is create a new Python file. So right click the project name, new, then go to Python file. You can call it whatever you want. I will call it Simple Dance. I don't know if in Python they use this naming convention, but I'm used to it from Java, so I'll go with it. Okay, so let's clear a few things first. I'm assuming that you already know these from taking like the basic Python tutorials, but I'll just repeat them. Basically, Python is not a compiled language like Java or C++. It's an interpreted language. What this means is that Python, the interpreter, will open our code, which will have some code here. It will just open the code, start reading it line by line, and it will execute it as on the go. So theoretically, you can just start writing code right now without anything. So for example, print, let's do the famous hello world. And if you click run, then you can see that it successfully ran. But you might have seen in the examples of the SDK or in some other Python programs, if you have read some, you might have seen something like that. Maybe if the name is equal, my bad, to this, then we're gonna call some function. Usually it's called main. It's called main, define main. Okay, and then your code's gonna go here, for example, print the hello world message. Now, if you've seen this, and this will also run perfectly, as you can see. Now what this means quickly, when Python starts a program or a module, some parameters or some variables are set by default, like the double underscore name double underscore. And in the case when this module is run as the main one, then this will take the value of double underscore main double underscore. So what we're saying here is that if our code is run as the main module, as the main program, we want to execute this code. Otherwise, this code is not going to execute. If you're a little bit lost with the terminology I'm using with main and I don't know, modules, just ignore it. I just want to make sure that you understand a little bit what's going on if you read this in some other place. In our case, we'll go ahead and do this. We're not just gonna type our code anywhere. So the first thing we need to do is to create a robot object. This will allow us to have access to all the API functions, some of which are those of the motors. So let's go ahead. Let's go to the API, which is always where we want to look first. And we want to go to the robot class. Okay, so what we want to do is to create a new robot here. And actually, just by reading like the description here, you can tell that this is where you should start. let's read it quickly. The robot object is responsible for managing the state and connection to a vector and is typically the entry point to running the SDK. Okay, you can go ahead and read this page, all of it on your own if you want to know more about what's going on, but basically we're gonna use this. This is the object. We're gonna use this to create a new object called robot here, and from robot we're gonna have access to all the other API functions. Now, I don't like copy pasting code. I think especially when you're starting with learning something new, just go ahead and type it yourself. You will more easily memorize things and know what's going on. So with Anki underscore vector, which is the name of the SDK. Yeah, so here it's gonna complain. You see the red one, the red line. And like I told you previously, just Alt enter on the error and you'll have a suggestion of fixes. What we want to do is just import. Now here, this one, the robot, this is just a name. We can change this, for example, call it vector. It will not matter. Okay, and now we can say vector dot, and we have access to all the other functions in the API in the SDK. In our case, let's first start with something simple. For example, let's control the wheels, make vector go forward. Simple stuff. Okay, if you want to control the wheel, obviously this is gonna be probably somewhere in the motors class. So if we go to the motors class, you can see that we just have three functions. One for setting the speed of the wheel, one for the lift, the arm, and one for the head. In our case, we're more interested in the wheel for now. You can see that it takes 4 parameters: the speed of the left wheel, the speed of the right wheel, and the accelerations. And if you notice, actually the acceleration parameters are optional. You can tell because they're like, you can see that they're assigned in the declaration of the function. If you read like some parameter equals and there's a value, it means that the parameter is optional, and if you omit it, then this is the value that it will take by default. So if we just specify the speeds, the acceleration will be set to 0. Excuse my low voice, I'm a little bit sick. Okay, so here let's go ahead, vector.motors dot, we want to set the wheel speed, so set wheel motors. And if you forgot what the parameters are, you can simply go ahead and press Ctrl P and you will get them here. You can see the left wheel speed, right wheel speed, acceleration, and by the way, all of them are floats, and the speed is actually in millimeters per second. So let's say you want to make vector go 5 centimeters forward. 5 centimeters are 50 millimeters. So if you want him to go 5 centimeters in 1 second, we want to set the speed to 50 millimeters for the left wheel and 50 millimeters for the right wheel. This should do the trick, but there's also one thing to do, is that once we have set the speed, we have to actually wait 1 second for vector to move. Then we need to set the speed back to 0, make him stop basically, and this should be it. Now to wait 1 second, we're gonna use the time. The time class has a sleep method. Now, okay, it's gonna complain again. Alt enter and we're gonna import the time.sleep, and it takes one parameter, which is how many seconds you want to sleep. Want to sleep for 1 second, so 50 millimeters, 5 centimeters in 1 second. And then we're gonna say vector.motors.setWheelMotors, and I'm gonna set it to 0, 0. Okay, this should do the trick. Let's test it. Let me wake up Vector first. Hey Vector. Okay. And let's run it. Okay, it connected, control granted, and actually vector just moved 5 centimeters in front of me. Um, let's go ahead and test the other methods for controlling the motors. Sorry, so basically the lift and the head. Okay, it's actually easier for the lift and the head because there's only one parameter, which is the speed. And in both cases, the speed is in radians per second, which is like the rotational speed. Let's go ahead and just write them in the program, make sure that they execute correctly. For example, let's set the lift motors, my bad, and we want them to go like I'm more comfortable with degrees than radians, and if you're like me, then there's a math class in Python. So if you write math, let's import math. Inside the math class, there's a radians function, which you basically give it the angle in degrees, say 90 degrees, and it will return it in radians. So let's let's delete this. Start from here. Okay. So let's create a variable called angle, angular speed. Okay, and it's gonna be mass dot radians. Say you want the speed to be like, for example, 45 degrees per second. And now we have this speed in radians per second thanks to mass dot radians. Next, we're gonna say vector dot motors dot set head or lift, doesn't matter, both of them take radians per second, and we're gonna say start moving at this angular speed that we created previously. And for example, if we wait for 1 second again, so sleep for 1 second, then okay, let's go Control D, this will duplicate the line, Control Shift down arrow, this will move the line to whatever place you want. Just a trick to quickly duplicate some code. And now after waiting 1 second, this means that the head has rotated for 45 degrees. Then we'll set the speed to 0, just make him stop rotating his head before he gets dizzy. Okay, let's try this script. Connected and vector did it. I think I'll edit the video, guys, and just film vector doing all these moves. Let's go ahead and replace this with set lift motors. Run it. Okay, it also worked. So basically now you have like everything you need to make vector move in whatever way you want him to do so. I think I will cut the video here, do some experimentation myself on how I can create like a cool dancing animation, and I will get back to you with the code or like the sequence of moves that I find. You can do the same if you want. You can try to go yourself, create some movement that makes Vector look like he's dancing. And I'll be back in a moment.